Mr. Loughran. Am I saying that correctly?
Loughran.
Loughran. Mr. Loughran, please state your name and whom you represent, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. My name is Robert Loughran. I'm here on behalf of Charles Foster, the chairman of the Immigration Task Force of the Greater Houston Partnership. The Greater Houston Partnership is an organization of over 30 chambers of commerce from the counties surrounding Harris County and the larger Houston area. The Houston area and the chambers of commerce have determined over the years that at least the Houston economy and by extension, the Texas economy is largely dependent on workers who are both legal immigrants and undocumented workers. That the Greater Houston Partnership is very concerned, as was testimony earlier today, that Texas might be painted with the same brush that Arizona and Georgia has been painted. It has a direct economic impact on Texas jobs, whether that be tourism, conventions, and also just having workforces. I do know from speaking with colleagues that what has been testified earlier today about not being able to get farm workers to pick fruits and vegetables in Georgia, having over $1 billion damage. We still have a very significant agricultural community here in Texas. I also wanted to just point out that I'm a board-certified immigration lawyer. I serve pro bono on the State Bar of Texas Committee on Laws Related to Immigration. That makes me a immigration expert. I've spent my last 25 years studying and working in this particular area. I do know from my interactions what the witnesses have said earlier today. I've been here since 7 o'clock in the morning, listened to, I believe, a dozen sheriffs and police chiefs who have talked about the intimidation of witnesses and victims. I have tremendous heartache for those who have had are the victims of crimes, regardless of who the perpetrators are. I think we've heard about some horrible crimes here today. I did do a stint in the Harris County District Attorney's Office prior to becoming an immigration lawyer, and I do know that the focus should be on the crime. Specifically, the immigration status is ancillary, it's secondary. If someone's a murderer, they're a murderer and they need to be pursued. If they're a rapist, they need to be pursued. If they're abusing children, they need to be pursued. So what we do know, absolutely, and I have personal experience with this, it is so difficult at times when after tens of hours have been invested or more into a investigation or a prosecution, if you cannot get that complaining witness, the DA will actually drop the case. And I'm concerned as a resident of the state, as a United States citizen, about the enforcement of all our laws, and that we need to, what I'm concerned about with this particular bill is it doesn't get from point A to point B. I think Ronald Reagan would turn over in his grave that we're having a bill proposed out of Lubbock, which may be passed by this committee, that is telling Harris County or Houston what they can and cannot do. I hear in the media all the time, and it's been Republican doctrine for 30 years that the feds should not be telling the state what to do. And here we have a situation where the state is telling the municipalities what to do. We've had testimony here that what happens in El Paso, or how the local policies are made in El Paso, is different from what's in Brownsville, which is different from what's in Houston and what's different in Austin. I think we, as Americans, we celebrate that. And we heard also today from the sheriffs and police chiefs that they need to be able to control their enforcement agents. I grew up next door neighbors are all constables and sheriffs or what have you, and I can tell you from personal experience that the complexity of immigration law is lost on a lot of these individuals, and that, as was discussed earlier today, racial profiling is absolutely a natural consequence. I think that, lastly, the whole concept of the fact that there are sanctuary cities, the premise of this bill is a fictitious premise. As you heard from the sheriff for Harris County, they are alleged to be a sanctuary city. They process. Would
you close quickly, Mr. Walker?
I will. They process everyone. They do run them through the fingerprints, but they don't do it in a way that intimidates witnesses and individuals on the street. When they have arrested someone for a crime, citizen, permanent resident, other, it doesn't matter. Then they process the individual. Everyone's 10 printed. They run the background. And I just wanted to close with a concept. we're talking about passing a law here, and everyone says, well, there ought to be a law. There are dozens of laws here, and passing another law is not going to make the change at all the enforcement of the law. The feds are pursuing this. It was testified earlier today. Border Patrol has doubled. I, as part of this committee, have been down there at the border. The money flowing into the Border Patrol, they're all doing overtime. They're tripping all over each other. They are very much on this. The current president is known as the deporter-in-chief. There have been more people deported under this president than any
Mr.
other.
Loughran, would you close, please?
Okay.
Questions? Senator Lucio.
I don't want anyone leaving here today thinking that I'm a one-sided legislator. I've made it clear for the group in the morning that I went as far when it comes to fighting organized crime, when it comes to fighting drugs, whether it's our people, as been stated here, Texans or Americans, or from across the border, south of the border. I went as far as joining some of my colleagues in support of the National Guard setting up, not the Minutemen, but the National Guard setting up in that area based on their ability to do surveillance and the using of their technology, etc. I will fight them tooth and nail, and I will always vote to support the funding for border security because it impacts the whole state. But when it comes to those that are being exploited, as you well know, and those that have meant something to this state, my best friend was a Republican that died about a year and a half ago. He built homes in the Houston area mainly. Mr. Bob Perry told me a dozen times when we visited that he couldn't thank the Hispanic or Mexican people enough for making him a multi-millionaire, coming here, carpenters and plumbers and bricklayers and everyone else that had done so much to make him the man he was and to have a thriving business that he had. He had 2 orphanages, one in Matamoros and one in Central America, that he started not as an old man, but as a very young man. I respected him more than I can ever express to anyone because of his generous heart. And he was right. You know, I played a little golf in the old days. I don't play as much now, but I played country clubs in Plano and Dallas and Houston, the good ones. And guess who the workers are? Yeah. All from the inner area of Mexico, the interior. I ask them, I talk to them. They come here to work and to make a difference. And if we're going to paint them with a brush, all of them together, and think that they're criminals, that we're going over our heads and trying to feed them and house them and do whatever we do for them, I just want people to know that Mr. Perry told me that the greatest work ethic he had ever seen from any ethnicity group was those of Mexican descent that had come to this state, you know, seeking work. He was in favor of a guest worker program that we've never been able to establish, unfortunately, in this state or other states, at least the border states of this country, affording people to come in, earn some money, and go back and try to take care of their families, feed them, and stay in their home country. That's what they want, but they don't have the opportunities. And as of late, you know, you go across the river, it is a war zone for them. They're being killed by the thousands. And if you heard, you would hear some of those stories that we have heard from some that have actually been in that crossfire. It also saddens me. Just like the testimony that was given here by those that came to pay tribute to those that have been killed. But many more have been killed by non-illegal aliens than the illegal aliens in this state. Right. And we know that, but yet we choose to just drive it down that illegal aliens are evil, and some are, and I detest those that are, but those that aren't, the humble, the meek, the hungry, we can't turn our backs on them, and I will never apologize, you know, for my faith being part of my decision making, but I do respect, and we just differ in our approaches and how we address issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Lucio. Members, other questions for Mr. Loughran?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Garcia?
First of all, thank you for your patience. And I know you've followed immigration law for a long time, and I think you're probably very familiar with sanctuary cities and how they evolved, I guess, what was in the mid-'80s. In your opinion, are there any sanctuary cities in the state of Texas today?
I'm not aware of any cities in the state of Texas. I think this issue has been demonized, that there's a big question about something happening elsewhere or these resources being taken in different directions. But I am not aware of any municipality, any city, any town in the state of Texas where those who have committed crimes, state crimes, are shielded or protected from prosecution.
Right.
So would it surprise you to know that the author of this bill has listed Austin, Baytown, Brownsville, Channelview, Denton, Dallas, El Cenizo, Fort Worth, Houston, Katy, Laredo, McAllen, and Port Arthur as sanctuary cities?
I think what I'm concerned about here is just it goes into a much broader issue about our society today, about people yelling at each other and actually not looking at the specific facts. Specific facts is that the Travis County sheriff specifically signed up to participate in 287, and the city and the sheriff were at loggerheads there. The city is within the county, and as was testimony here earlier today, the Harris County is very specifically running detainers, and that I can tell you from my practice and just being here in the community and my participation in the various committees that those who commit are any sort of threat whatsoever, that there's a prioritization made that if a U.S. citizen would get out on bail on some sort of event that involved injury to others or had moral turpitude, the alien, legal or illegal, will be detained and actually put in. We have private jails from Correction Corporation of America. We have them in Hutto. We have them a little bit past New Braunfels, between New Braunfels and San Antonio. Then we have on the other side of San Antonio, we have all these private jails for individuals who are being detained with the possibility that they might be some harm to U.S. citizens.
Are they still also not even eligible for personal reconnaissance bonds? That
No,
used to be the case some years back.
What happens is if the individual is determined to be, if they've committed a felony, if it's a crime involving a weapon, if it's one of moral turpitude, and then the detainer is there, and ICE, as was testified here earlier, comes within 72 hours to take them. Handcuffs are the county handcuffs are unlocked. Twist ties, federal twist ties, are put on their wrists, and they're taken over to the private jails.
So this whole notion that they're going to flee and go back to escape prosecution is
we had some testimony earlier today, and it's awful, absolutely awful, and it happens that individuals flee, but U.S. citizens flee to Mexico as well. U.S. citizens flee to Canada to avoid prosecution. U.S. citizens flee to Europe.
There was some in the news just last night that he had plans to flee to Cuba.
Yeah, and that happens, and it's awful. But what I'm heartened by is that our relationships with Mexico, where individuals do flee to, the Mexicans will arrest them. It takes some time. They will turn them over to them. And we have executed, we have put to death Mexican nationals here. It's gone up to the U.S. Supreme Court. And we've been able to give the ultimate penalty for those crimes, as if and there was no difference between they were U.S. citizens, permanent residents, or something else. The problem that we have here is that Mexico is a sovereign state. They do not have the death penalty. In order to comply with extradition, as we heard in testimony today, the prosecutor had to agree not to pursue the death penalty. That leads to the extradition, and thankfully, I think Senator Lucio was talking about the fact that he, which I fully support, that this individual will never see the light of day if prosecuted, will not be subject to parole, will not be subject to probation, and it'll be a real life sentence, and I think that's an appropriate outcome.
And just to spell another myth or fiction, How many countries are represented in the Houston area that you've seen? Because I know everyone thinks Mexico, but in reality,
Houston is a true international city. I got to Houston in 1972. You got your Egyptians, you got your Vietnamese, you have a huge Persian community that people know as Iranians. You have, I think it's something to 135, 180 different nationalities. The medical center in Houston would not be what it is. It's the one of 5 premier medical centers in the world: London, Los Angeles, New York, and Houston. And I'll be going to my father's oncologist on Monday and seeing a very prominent Indian immigrant to the United States who's doing a wonderful job with my father's bone marrow cancer.
so you said there's about 185 countries?
Yes, it's a truly international city. Every continent is represented in the Houston area.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Garcia. Senator Hall, any questions? Thank you. Mr. Adams?